PAVE cohort. We're here. It's going to be another fine day of Pilum Teaches DCS going up in the F4 Phantom 2. Going to be showing off the PAVE spike pod and playing around with that. Drop some bombs.
Canopy down and locked.
And we'll be getting back into the jet here in just a moment. And we can see all of that in action.
Yep.
We'll do our walk around in the jet while Jester's aligning it, and then we'll be ready to go. Alright, so we've changed maps a little bit, as Germany is a little squidgy there, it would seem, for some of that, but we're going to be getting right back into our lesson for today. Again, we're using the PAVE spike pod. We're actually losing the slow track pod here on this one, which will be interesting. Changed our loadout up a little bit here for what we're doing on this map. We've got the GBU-10, so we can actually guide those things onto the target, but we are carrying a pair of strikes and some bombs, because we're going to have to deal with some other little threats there on our way into the target area. That said, should the net go out again, we are recording this stream from this point forward. And we'll be able to post that one intact to YouTube later on. So if it does fall, bear with us, we'll be back. As it appears that it has done that right now. So we will be definitely able to carry on with that. That said, since we've changed missions here, let's go ahead and talk about our new set of targets. We are going up against our old adversary area here at Yucca Pass. It can shoot back. Our first concern that we're going to have is dealing with this small SA-3 site, which is what we got the Shrikes on board for. But there are some gun platforms down here and scattered pieces of armor. So we'll drop our first couple GBU-10s to try and knock out the rest of these air defenses. We do have some other regular iron bombs on board that we're going to use to try and take care of this tank area here. And then we will rearm and continue on with our laser-guided happy fun time.
Roger. Yes, sir. Chalk's out. Okay, sir. You're all set. Have a safe flight. Disconnecting.
Here we go. All right.
Okay, so while we're on our taxi roll, let's talk about some of the things that we're going to need. The first one, obviously, is we're going to need to have our bomb set to nose-tail fusing, which we have that turned on by activating that switch that we zoomed in on.
Trench running on this one.
When we get into using the laser-guided bombs, we're going to be using target find mode. That's going to be important, as that allows Jester to make full use of the targeting pod. Which does mean that we're going to be flipping this switch here, the radar to TV mode, a couple of times, as we toggle between both of those setups. Yeah, we got our sunglasses on, which is very important. Now, understandably, as we are going to be dealing with SAM sites first, we have two different Shrike Seeker heads on board. These are tuned for the flat face search radar and the low blow track radar of the SA3 site. I don't need the target find mode up just yet. Go ahead and put that back to off. It's important while you're transiting that you have a lot of that stuff set either to off or to neutral type positions, as if you need to use your air-to-air weapons, some of those air-to-ground selector modes here on your delivery mode dial will actually lock out your ability to fire air-to-air weapons. So you might have Sidewinder tone, you might be uncaging the seeker head to get it to look at a target, but the weapon will not come off the rail because your weapon delivery mode is set improperly. And give ourselves 2 ticks of flaps here. And we're just going to go right into the takeoff roll, pushing to full power.
Engine's good, airspeed off the peg.
Now we are a little heavy, but not super fiendishly so.
Knots.
We'll actually hold the nose down here until we get to just over 120 knots.
Oh man.
And we'll start easing back. Nose wheels come up. I'll maintain about 10 degrees. She will fly herself right off the runway.
3 o'clock.
Here flaps coming up. Adjusting our speed so we don't exceed 250.
Gear up. Flaps up.
And just a trim here for a nice gentle climb. So we are starting our way out, and I'm actually going to go ahead and give us a waypoint. As soon as Jester sees it.
Roger that. Diversion steering set.
Since we got the gas, we're going to give ourselves a nice steady climb. And while we're doing that, we'll come on out to the outside of the jet. And we'll talk about this fancy pod that we got on board today. So this is PAVE Spike. It is a first generation type laser targeting pod. It is daytime only, so it has no infrared capabilities, which means that in the dark, without flares, things like that, it is not going to be helpful there for you. It does have a laser that can operate through all of the standard laser codes.
Mud, 12 o'clock.
And it can't be steered and focused onto a target by Jester or by you. One of the things that we've utilized here, and these are going to be your important keys, these are temporary for the front seat, at least until heat blur at some point in time, changes all of this kind of stuff. But you're going to want to use the WSO or the WISO antenna hand control slew commands, up, down, left, right. I've bound those to my arrow keys on the keyboard, as I don't have all the other HOTAS options available. Those are already bound to other more important things than this. The other ones that you're going to want to have done are the antenna hand control trigger for half action, full action, and the hand control challenge button. And the challenge button is your zoom toggle between a 1x and 4x zoom on the targeting pod. It's not much, but as you're going to find out here, you're going to kind of take what you can get as far as that goes. The half action and full action triggers will recenter the targeting pod and and designate where the pod is supposed to be looking and fire the laser. So those are all going to be important buttons to make sure that you've got bound and ready to go. Reticle depression has been set to 17 mil dots, which when we're in air to ground mode, that should put the targeting pod roughly in the center of the pipper, which is going to be useful. As for the WISO, you have a few different ways that you can designate. The easiest way, working with your pilot up front, is to just go ahead and, point the nose at the target. And the WISO can use this 12 vis mode. And what that will do is it will slave that targeting pod forward, so that way you can look where the pilot is looking and go, okay, cool, I see the target area, let me go ahead and capture that and start scanning for your actual target. Available to a human WISO, but not so much to Jester, is the 9 mode, which takes the pod and slews it out here to your 9 o'clock. It looks straight out the left side of the aircraft. So if the pilot is in a left-hand kind of post-hole orbit somewhere, like, we'll just call it this mountain peak here, kind of in the center, and like, yep, it's definitely right there by that mountain peak, they could slap it in the 9 vis mode, you can roll the wings slightly down towards it, and the WISO can then start looking for the target area there. Communication is key between a human crew. That more or less goes without saying. But you really do need to know how to operate with Jester if you're going to be making use of this pod solo and doing your thing. It is different than the F-14. You can't just tell him to look at a waypoint and have him go, okay, cool, I got it. We start scanning for targets around there automatically, because the F-14's pod and Jester's interactions with it are much better, if unrealistic, compared to doing this on your own. But that's what we got to work with right now. So that's the way we're going to be teaching it and doing the things, at least until such time that all that changes. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. If this PAVE spike pod is so terrible and so garbage, why are we even trying to use any of it? Why not just let somebody else buddy lace for you? Well, that's certainly an option. But if you were on a arms limited type mission, for example, if you're flying on any of my Cold War Germany missions that I've got going right now, they're all arms limited for the 80s. And in some cases, especially the early 80s, there was not targeting pods proliferated through all these other aircraft. That's a newer invention. For things like the Lantern 1 and all of those kinds of targeting pods. Now, as far as what this replaced, because this is not really a first-generation laser designation type system, early F4 crews, the WISO would have a equivalent to a handheld designator type unit that is bolted onto the left side of the window so that it would look outside the window there. And with a limited array of traverse, the F4 pilot could fly over the top of an area, and then the Wizzo in the back seat could use this designator bolted to the side of his window to point at the target and steer bombs, which made it work for other aircraft, but it really did not allow for any kind of self-designation, which, while not the preferred method of doing it, is at least possible with the PAVE spike pod. There's some YouTube videos out there of precision weapons and all that in Vietnam and those kinds of things. One of the favorite ones that we like to quote from time to time is one that features a character by the name of Major White providing the commentary. And there's a brief clip in there of a Wizzo putting in this large control box that bolts right here kind of on the side of the window and makes the limited visibility just that much more so. Alright, there's our SA-3. We're going to go ahead and switch from open mode to priority mode. Select air to ground. I'm going to turn on our flight director. And since we're engaging with the Shrikes first, I'm going to use direct mode, ARM, master arm on. Now, one of the things that we're getting is that tone. And I've paused things so we can kind of look down at it. And we can see this crosshair. This crosshair indicates where exactly the Shrike is receiving information as to the target, which in this case is kind of right off our nose and slightly right, which we can see that. Here's some of our landmarks for that target area. So Yucca Pass is currently a little obscured by a cloud. Actually, it's not super obscured. It's right here. That's Yucca Pass. So our SA-3 site is right about there underneath that cross in the dead center, which corresponds to slightly right and slightly low for the Shrike. Now coming down back here and looking at the Shrike, you can see a lot of similarities between the Shrike and the Sparrow. The Shrike is more or less a reverse engineered Sparrow that uses a different seeker head that, instead of tracking the continuous wave illumination radar from the launch aircraft, it looks for that on the ground and will spin and twirl to simulate the kind of nutating horn effect that goes into tracking a target with the radar. So if you watch the Shrike in flight, you'll see the control surfaces there bending and twisting pretty much all over the place as it twirls and makes its way down. And that's all for a reason. So what we're going to do now is try and come up here and tag this SA-3 site. Where is he? There he is. You can see the low blow has already kind of tilted and is pointing back at us. Search radar is doing its thing. And we are right about there. Boop. We're going to make use of this hill to kind of guard our approach and be on the way in. So we are going to get down low and attack it from about 7 or so miles away. And the reason why we're doing that is twofold. The first one is we could probably get away with shooting the Shrike that is tuned to the search radar right now, as we are getting constant search pulses from it. We are a long ways away, because the Shrike has a very similar range to early model Sparrows. So the odds of it running out of gas and falling short are actually kind of high. So what I want to do is get closer. So that our weapon system is very much in range. But what we also need is that for that SA3 track radar to be illuminating us too. That's going to be critical because the Shrike can only guide if it's receiving radar energy and information. I'm going to go full throttle. The louder that tone is, the more on center we are. We do have to be within about 3 degrees, or have the missile fall within 3 degrees. And here we go, Magnum. And they both hit short. There's no need to fear. We do have an alternative means of attacking this target. Which will also involve using this hill. We need to be quick here. That's him. Captured. And it looks like a dead system. That's good. That means that we can get to our real mission here. And make use of our pod. Now we're going to go and extend to the east a little bit. And follow through on what we mentioned earlier. And for those who playing the game here at home, what that entails is dropping our GBU-10s to try and take out these air defense groups. We got a couple of batteries of Sparkas and Shilkas that need removed. But the low blow in the SA-3 is done. We have a nice marker out there for illuminating the sort of area that we need to look in. And we're just going to adjust our contrast and brightness here a little bit so we can kind of see that a little clearer. We're going to use that challenge button to zoom in on the target area. As you can see, we've got our 17 mil set, and the pipper in the pilot seat is roughly corresponding to the center there. Pause here for a minute because we've got a lot of things that are going to happen kind of quick, so I want to make sure that we talk about those. First one is we're going to capture that zone, and we're going to use that with the same gesture short interface button, the contextual interface, that we use for just about everything else when it comes to interacting with gesture, which includes but not limited to tracking targets with the radar, locking targets with the radar, capturing a point on the ground to be able to use the DT mode for the jet. That's the first step. And what that will do is it will lock the pod roughly to wherever it is that you press the button. It will wobble a little bit because it presumes that you are telling Jester, hey, I've got the target area there, go ahead and put that into area track and go from there. The area track is very limited, especially on the slow pod that we're using, so you are going to have to be prepared to manually steer. We also want to keep our airspeed relatively constant and steady so that we can make adjustments, especially as we're doing this on our own. And we're just going to want to try and keep that target on top of wherever it is we're going. I'll try and pause again as we get ready to do this and show the two lines that we're looking at as far as where your drop cue is. Carry on. So first things first, we're going to unpause. And I'm going to tell Jester roughly here.
Captured.
Now he is locking that target area. There's our group. Go ahead and give it a tap of that long press. Okay. So we have a couple of lines here on the left. When they meet together, that is your drop cue. Now it's important, whether you're dropping these in a shallow dive or in level flight, that what you are trying to do is put that 17-degree seeker head on the front of the GBU in a spot where it can see the laser. Because if it can't see the laser, it can't guide. If it can't guide, you're in trouble. Otherwise, what we're going to be doing here is pressing and holding the pickle button. We will hear solid tone. And when that little tiny tick meets the big line, the bomb should come off the jet.
Speed 470.
Just going to try and fly our cues here. And then we're actually going to go out and reset. Our lines weren't solid, which means the laser wasn't firing. I think some of that had to do with the fact that I pressed the wrong contextual button there. Blinking means it's firing. That's what that is. That's right. I had that backwards. So we'll do it again. If you need to change the laser code, that is in the back seat for the Wizzo, you would select the number and then hit laser code enter, and it will flash no go for a moment, but if it clears out right away, the laser code is valid. Why the game decided it was going to go ahead and take that time to close. Crashed just about everything there. Hang on a second, folks. Just gonna get back in here real quick. I think the net outages up and down caused a problem with DCS's authentication there, which is what caused us to disconnect midway in the single player mission. Plan on making a recording of that. We have to do this one again next week once they have more things put together. Alright, so what I'm going to do is temporarily delete our SAM site. Already killed it. Place another F4 here. As an air start. Sure she's got our paint scheme on it. Forego the Shrikes as we've already shot those. Make sure we got our pod on board. Actually, in the interest of doing more with the pod, I will go ahead and just replace those empty rails with GPU 12s, which is what we would have used on our second pass. Just for the added effect, let's go ahead and slap down a small fire where that SAM was. Just a moment there while it sorts out the game capture as we're doing the recording still. Proceed as if things are going well. All right.
Got a new bogey. Left 25, 37 miles, 14,000.
Set up for bombs. Target find. Get our pod ready. Trim the aircraft to get here. And we'll be back in business. Okay, so there's our landmark area. It's going to go ahead and get that pipper kind of down there and in there. Again, we are looking for those sparkas first. It should be about in there.
Okay, captured. Captured.
That's looking better.
$500. And that's 510.
That didn't come off the jet at all. We still have our bombs though, so let's go out and reset. Can't be helpful to tell, Jester. Some of what's going on. Go ahead and try and get him some accurate information there.
Roger that.
Use half action trigger to go ahead and get
And,
ourselves
nails, 8 o'clock.
back to center. Okay.
I'm captured.
Actually want to get this other group. We're full action trigger. We have steady lights. That should be the laser firing. We're pressing and holding the bomb release.
Speed 490. There's 500.
Pickle. I'm trying to hold it in limits. And good effect. So I mentioned holding it in limits a minute ago. And what we're looking at there is this gauge here. And anywhere in the green is what we want. Anywhere in the white is very risky. since the pod is on the left side of the aircraft, we can do left-hand orbits a lot easier than we can do right. See, we got a lot more play. On that side of the aircraft. And that mimics the original, use of targeting equipment in the aircraft being out to the left side of the window. So we got one more GBU 10. Let's go ahead and get back in there, and we will try and take the Sparka battery out next. Rather than use the gesture contextual menu, I'm just going to go ahead and full action trigger for the Wizzo seat. It looks about where I want it.
480 coming up.
And we're going to try and fly the dots.
We're at 490. Showing 480.
Almost there.
470.
Ka-chunk. Just want to try and keep it on the target area. See, the bomb is steering its way down. Good hits. Can terminate. As you can see, this is very vulnerable doing this on our own, especially dealing with a pod and a system that is limited already. So it really is for the best if you're working with another aircraft to have them designate for you. So that way the deploying aircraft can just focus on getting the bomb in parameters for a fraction of a second, get the bomb off the jet, and then defend and get the hell out of Dodge. While you, the designating aircraft, can stand off, out here, where, barring the clouds being in the way, it is a lot easier to identify a target area and just hold on to that target area outside of the ability of these things to shoot at you while you're still within the range of the laser. Alright, there's more air defense down there, so we're going to go ahead and target that next with our first GBU-12. With the Sparkas and the Shilkas being out of commission and the SAM site, we should have a much easier go of it. And those systems are right about there, so let's go ahead and designate it and zoom in. That's our friend.
Speed is 480.
Yeah, I'm just going to fly the dots and try and fly the airspeed that we
490.
asked for.
We're at 500 knots.
And I hit the button way too early. That bomb is probably going out into space. And it looks like it blew up short. Ballistically, what the target find computer is telling the bomb is this is going to get you within parameters. If you drop at this point, in this place, at this airspeed, ballistically you should be most of the way to the target. And for some of the earlier model GBUs, like the 10, the 12, and the 16, that rely on what's called bang-bang guidance. And what that means is these little fins that you can see on the bomb, in actuality, will fully deflect, which kind of puts the bomb on a wobble towards the target. And that spills energy. That's where more modern systems and more expensive systems like the GBU-24 use proportional guidance, which will get you much more smoothly onto the target, which in turn gives better range. For most purposes, it is more cost-effective to use the bang-bang guidance and just get a little bit closer. But certain harder targets, we still use things like GBU-24 or JDAM and everything else on. Alright, so let's go ahead and get back in here, and that's better. That's the lights we're looking for. That's our friend. Here comes the drop.
Last at 520.
They are shooting at us. I'm going to maneuver just a little bit. Pull the zoom back. And that's a hit. Got a couple of near hits, but nothing dangerous. And be so bold to suggest that that site is dead. Means the rest of this we can kind of take with impunity. And 7,000 pounds left. We will extend and we will try and drop a GBU-12 on the tank farm that's down there. The principles at play are very basic. If I was doing this with another Allied aircraft, one of the two of us would be designating for the other, which makes it very boring for the person who's steering the laser, but it does do a couple of things for us that are useful. The first one is that if I'm just in a steady left-hand orbit and I've got the target area in sight, I can designate one target, and as soon as that target is destroyed, with minor adjustments to the laser, find a new target in the same area. So if we were up here with a flight of 2 or 3 aircraft, for example, like if I've got Ihort, Trigger, myself, and Levi all up here, I could sit here and point at this target in just a left-hand orbit with the pod and go, okay, I got a target, first bomb goes in, they drop. As soon as they've dropped and have destroyed the target, the next person in line could get into the zone. And so long as all of the bombs were on the same code as the laser, all I have to do is just slew the pod around to the next target. And we can drop bombs very quickly, and by the time the third person has dropped their bomb, the first one should be in position to drop again. So as long as the coordination is there, you can really do some magic with this system. Even for one as old as this one. Okay, we are on steady beam. See my intended target. Gonna fly the dots. Pickle. I think I see a better target. As the pilot, I'm trying to keep the motions gentle so I don't outrate the pod. And that's a hit. We got one more GBU-12 left. There are other tanks in that zone in the same area that we just hit. Can just come down here real quick and take a peek at that. We blew that one up. I think we're going to go for his friend here on the other side of the building. And we'll drop our 750s. And return to Creech. Okay. I was playing the game there at home. Yeah, our net's been this bad up and down. But we are dropping bombs. We got one more of these GBU-12s left. And the irony is that even though it's kind of screwing with my stream for today, which I'm very much not happy about, it is providing the information and the data that I need to be able to bring this to the folks over at Cox Communications and give them the finger and tell them to fix their shit. Alright, let's roll in and we'll attack this tank. Don't really relish 20 minutes worth of internet outage on a supposedly always on connection, so things to complain about later. In the meantime, though, we got targets to kill, so let's go ahead and zoom in. Full action that Wizzo trigger. The laser is on. We got those solid lights. Tells us that we're good to go. We're gonna fly our dots.
There's 550.
Pickle. Try and keep that target designated there. I'm just doing gentle motions with the pod when it wiggles out of alignment. All right, that looks good. Zoom out and terminate. And before we get set up to drop regular 750s, we'll go back down and take a peek. And very dead armor. Bomb crater's right underneath it, so we hit him more or less in the tank hatch. And is a dead tank. Alright, so we're going to be using DT mode next. We'll be dropping these 750-pound M117 bombs. Fusing is the same as any of the other bombs. We've got our pylon selected for the centerline. We are in DT mode on our weapon delivery mode selector. I've selected a quantity of 1, so we're dropping in singles, and we are in bomb. This does not make use of the targeting pod, but you'll note that the pipper is a little more free-floating now. That's representing the actual bore sight of the radar. I'm going to get out here from behind this cloud so we can clearly see our engagement area. And select a victim du jour, which you see this little silver house, kind of dead center, just to the right of that smoke. We've got 2 vehicles there on either side of it. We're going to try and bomb one of them, probably the closer of the 2. We're rolling in, keeping the target area in sight. Losing the canopy frame here for a minute, but we'll get it back quickly enough. Go easier on the throttle so I don't overspeed, as I don't want to impact the ground. I want the bombs to do that. And contextual menu. Just tap that button once. Jester reports captured, so he's actually illuminating that area. Press and hold. Goes up gently. Bombs away. And this M117 is more or less going right where it needed to. It looks like we got a twofer on that one. Roll over and select our next set of victims. We've got another pair of MTLBs right there at that crossroads in the middle of that gray section. We've also got BMP at the end of that house. BMP at the end of that house. That T-shaped building is unusual, so that's probably a bombing target. And we got 2 more tanks that are in that platform. As we got our pick of the litter, we're going to try and go after these pair of MTLBs. If we can't keep doing twofers on that. Get around this cloud, and we'll come rolling down on top of them there. A little slow, but we'll pick those knots up here in a minute. Steady out towards our target. Capture the area nearby.
And captured.
Pickle. And shack. £5,500. Still plenty of gas. 3 bombs left. Well, we're more or less in line for this guy, so let's come in on him.
Captured.
Close enough to kill an MTLB. And a pair of bombs left. I think we will try and hit those tanks. And we can kind of line up for them.
Okay, captured.
And it looks like we crippled one, crippled both. We didn't actually destroy either one of those. And we're going to go and select high rate for the gun. I'm thinking that last BMP down there, next to that house, try and strafe him on our way out the door, and then we'll go to Creech and get more weapons.
Captured.
There's a couple of vehicles that are there. Let's see if we can't strafe them too. Damaged but not destroyed, and we ran out of bullets. So with that, it's time to return to Creech. Do a pretty quick rearm there. 7 miles? Yeah, that's right. And we'll just do the rearm by putting fuel tanks on board the jet. And just transfer that fuel into the main tanks when we take off. And we'll continue on. Yeah, the net's been having a fit, but I'm actually glad that it is right now today. Only because it means that be able to pull those logs up for the technician when they're here. We were down for the better part of almost an hour. I've been recording this whole time there with it, so at least that'll be able to get to YouTube, but that's what we're looking at. Alright, so we'll go back to Creech. We'll put bags on the jet to speed or refuel along, and bring up more GBU-12s, and we'll get back to using that PAVE spike pod. And work to finish off that objective area. You did. It was almost low mat quality. Of course, it was a quick doodle, so there's that. Now, let's prepare for landing here. I'm going to raise the seat all the way up. Yeah, I guess I could see that. Go ahead and close our sight there. Don't damage it with landing. Master arm is safe. Weapons delivery mode is set to off. Weapons selector is set to C, which kind of acts like a safe. And dip down below these clouds here. And we'll start lining up for Creech. Start adjusting the trim. And to spare everybody's ears, I'm going to turn the AOA indexer noise down. $250, gear coming down. $225, 2 tips flaps coming down. Re-trimming the aircraft. I generally aim for an approach speed somewhere between 150 and 200 knots, depending upon the weight of the jet and what I'm bringing back. As we start to enter good descent here, so a little high as far as altitude goes. Try not to pay too much attention to the barometric altitude, as Creech is about 5,000 feet, where Nellis is about 1,800 feet. We're getting closer to being on AOA. We're bringing the throttles up a little bit so we don't hit that stall speed.
All right, gear, flaps, pressure, warning lights, and annex kit.
We're down to about 160 knots. Now, solid tone there, you'll notice corresponds with the center of the AOA indicator lighting up, meaning that we're on a good AOA. Got a little quick there. Apparently that wasn't a noteworthy enough landing for Jester. But he's also not complaining. All right. This to the invisible shoot monkeys. Stow the drogue. And let's do a quick turnaround in the F4. I'm not going to change the fuel settings, but we are going to replace the gun. GBU-12s, PAVE spike. Bring up more iron bombs because that's always fun. Put the right port number on the jet.
Request rearming. Copy.
It's going to request rearming. Putting all the air-to-air weapons in the pod back on board.
Rearming complete.
Okay. Set for takeoff trim. Flaps are already set.
Engine's good. Airspeed's coming alive.
I'll lower my chair in a minute once we get going.
80 knots. 100 knots. I feel like flying. You feel like flying? I feel like flying.
Crosswind's a little bit of a pain. 150 knots, nose is coming up.
Nails 8 o'clock. Gears moving. Flaps up. Gear up.
Main tanks are refilling. All right, let's go ahead and set back up for target find and bombs. Back to TV mode. Master arms on. Nose tail fusing is set. And we're up to 6,700 pounds. You might have been able to get up to nearly a full tank of gas if we brought the centerline tank with us too. That time I would have just toggled over to the other centerline station and let it refill. We should be alright with this amount of gas to be able to make our follow-up strike.
Okay, nails 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and nails 3 o'clock.
So again, for those who might have missed it earlier on the, well, it's a recording actually, as the stream's been a little finicky with the net. We have 17 mil dot setting for our reticle, which corresponds with where the pod is looking and where the pipper's looking. With those two things being in the same position, the pilot can put the pipper on top of the target and then tell the Wizzo, either by telling Chester or by, talking into the microphone, that that's what they want to target, or that's near where they want to target, and fine-tune it from there. We're carrying our GBU-12s. If we needed to change our bomb code, it is in the Wizzo seat in this front right console in front of the inertial navigation system. Dial in the code, tap the laser code enter button. It will give you a brief no-go flash if it is right, and a long no-go flash and steady hold if it is wrong. If you put an invalid code there, that's your tell. It's important that the laser is operating on the same code as the bomb that you're trying to guide, whether it is from yourself or from other people. Broadly speaking, with the PAVE spike, it is better to designate for others than it is for yourself, but it is possible to designate for yourself. Just a lot more dangerous. It is a TV guided pod, so it has no infrared capabilities at all, meaning it's going to be effectively useless if you don't have good daylight. or illuminations over the top of the target area. That is our AO there to our left. Come out here to the right. And again, for the pilot, this gauge here tells you where the pod's line of sight limits are and whether or not you're about to exceed them. You'll get more play out of the left side of the aircraft than you will out of the right, as the pod is sitting in the front left semi-recessed station on the Sparrow rail. It's also a good habit for the F4E drivers, as they were using this PAVE spike pod as a replacement for an older laser designated system that physically mounted to this wall on the left side of the Wizzo's cockpit and was more or less the equivalent of a brace for a handheld laser designator unit that the Wizzo would then point out the window and shine on the target area to allow other aircraft to attack the target themselves. Okay, so as I recall, we had some other tanks that were down there that were damaged but not destroyed, so we're going to start with those for the GBU-12s. We'll come into the target area, get it roughly put underneath the Pipper. We're going to use that Wizzo antenna challenge to zoom in, and then a full action trigger to designate. We have steady green lights, those two tick marks, which means that the laser is firing and we are in good parameters. And we're going to start with this guy here on the end. I'm holding the pickle button down. Good chunk. Oh, damn it. Still set on pairs. That's a good lesson by itself, though. Zoom out a little bit. Try and hold that Pipper over the target. Target destroyed. All right. Let's reset to singles. And we'll go ahead and contact our man on the ground, Wayne Newton. Mr. Newton, how's it look down there? Well, it looks like there's a bunch of tanks that have been hit by bombs, and there's another one out here who's waiting for another great hit. Thanks, Mr. Newton. He didn't actually do any of that. Just have to say that for other slightly more legal reasons. He's got a little bit of a Ronald Reagan drawl to his voice. It's from an impersonation standpoint. Ronald Reagan and Casey Kasem kind of collided on the vocal stratosphere. Now we got one more piece of armor that was out there. We're just kind of extending for a nice good spot. And let's roll in and get him. Okay, Pipper coming up on the target. Nice long press, got a good designate.
Easy 490.
Pickle. And try and hold it there. Here's our boy. And that looks like a dead piece of armor. We have one more GBU-12 left. We got a couple of vehicles that we damaged with a gun strafe. That were kind of out here. Yeah, they're there. I think we'll extend, pick up some knots. About 5,000 pounds of gas. Still plenty of playtime.
Speed 430. We're at 460.
Good chunk. Zoom out a little bit so we can keep hold of that target easier. Laser's burning. And those look like dead vehicles. Let's go and terminate from that. And we'll go back to DT mode. And as we orbit here, let's go and take a peek here on the ground. Very dead armor. This building is going to be our next target there. Apparently we've damaged all those guns to the point where they are not operational, but they are not destroyed, so they're going to get a bomb too. Other than that, I think this objective is very well worked over. I might be just about out of things for us to hit. It was good. So let's roll in on this building. I lied, I think we'll get rid of those gun platforms first.
And captured.
Okay, and vehicle. Went long. Trying to maintain somewhere between 300 and 400 knots on these attacks, so we've got enough speed to get the bomb where it needs to go, but we don't overspeed.
Captured.
Okay. Well, we still got a couple of bombs left and 3,400 pounds. Let's go ahead and turn south. And we will find these bombs a new forever home.
Can you give me a fuel check? What's it at?
We have gas in the tank, Chester. £3,800. Got 3 bombs left on board. Let's see just how much carnage we can make. It's just 3 bombs and a couple of squirts of the gun. Set this one to low rate. Target area is out here to the south, near the town of Desert Rock. I'm flying a little offset from that in the hopes that we can pick out that target area, which is right here. And I think we'll do a bomb over the SAM site. One over the large group there, and one over those little rings. Now this is a, quote, undefended site, quote, so that SAM's not going to shoot at us. It's mostly there for training purposes, as I do use this mission a lot for flying with Mander or other folks that just, want a little bit of weapons familiarization. Sometimes I use it for familiarity flights, if it's been a minute since I've been on the fly. So it's nice to have
KC-135, 4 o'clock, 11 miles.
areas like that that look like the real thing. So that you know what those things look like and can best judge your attacks. All right, let's go ahead and capture it.
I'm captured.
Hold the Pipper's kind of just under the target. Vehicle. Special delivery. That was a good hit on that zone. All right, we'll aim for the large diamond shape, not the small diamond shape that's south of the SAM site. I say south, it's actually east. Go with the one that's a little further west. Try and aim for the middle of that group. And we're rolling in, picking up the knots really hard. 300. 350.
Okay, captured.
Kiss, kiss, boom, boom. £3,000. We'll go after that circular target area next. You want to make some time at some point to fly the new randomizer mission that I've built for this, which we'll probably do on stream here soon too.
Okay, captured.
It looked like I was right in the center, or nearly so. Go and we'll arm the gun. And do a little bit of strafey strafe. Some of this is a little bit of Kentucky windage because every little thing you do with the aircraft can determine where the end point of those bullets are going to be. Just try and fly it as steady as you can. I do tend to use a lot of low rate, especially if I'm doing things against targets on the ground. Kind of a combination way of conserving ammunition and making sure that the rounds that do go out hit where they're supposed to. Come by and we'll make another pass there in the other half of that. £2,300. According to the round counter, we're empty, so we probably got just a tiny little left in the gun. Okay. And with 2,000 pounds, we'll try and redeem our first landing there. Make this one a little more smooth. Not that the first one was awful, but it could have been better. We'll start preparing the ship for landing. This time we're going to come in for an overhead brake over the runway. And drop down to about 1,000 feet AGL. And do about 350 knots. For some of those naval aviators out there, sounds very close to a Case 1 arrival. We've kind of more or less fly it in the same way. I'm going to be making a left turn, so we're going to line up slightly right of the runway. And about 350 knots. I'll go ahead and move my chair into position, close the cowl. And we will be trimming and lowering gear as we turn back around. For runway 09. A little high according to the radar altimeter, so we're just trying to close that down a little bit. And as we cross about the midfield point here, aircraft over. Start our way back around. Descending through 300 knots. 250. Gears coming down. 225. 2 ticks flaps coming down. Adjust the trim as we roll out on the opposite direction. And at this point we are dirtied up, more or less on speed. Just make little taps of the trim to get it cozy. And what we're looking for is to put the end of that threshold there at about the 45-degree angle in line with our wing. Again, very similar to a Navy's Case 1 landing. The altitude and airspeed differences are present, as we're also not causing a controlled crash into the runway, or at least we shouldn't be. But by the time we come back around, and careful manipulations of the throttle, we'll be more or less on speed and on AOA.
Alrighty, gear, flaps, pressure, warning lights, anti-skid.
Landed a little short on that one, but thankfully on the threshold. Not perfect, since Chester didn't positively comment about it, but again, not terrible, as he didn't also negatively comment about it. You do have to feel that groove out a little bit with the F4, as unlike newer aircraft, you don't have a flight path marker or other handy simplifications to, put dotted lines on the end of the threshold and then you're at a 3-degree descent. Put your flight path marker where you want the back wheels to touch. You don't have those things in this aircraft, so you do kind of have to feel that out a little bit and do a combination of watching your sync rate and adjusting your engine power for the rate of descent, which your engine power should control your altitude more than maneuvering your stick should be at that point. Stick controls AOA, where your throttle controls descent rate, which is very helpful, especially since in the F4 your engines are basically pointed straight down at the ground like a VTOL arrival if you're in a good AOA position for the jet. And if you're noticing on your approaches that you are losing sight of the runway because you didn't put your seat up, that's also why. The seat should be raised so you can look down the nose of the aircraft, as the on AOA attitude is a bit higher than some other jets. And the nose is a little long, so it gets in the way. Not as tapered like on a more modern fighter. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and call the chief, put the chocks in the jet.
Roger.
preemptively shut down our left engine and start colding and darkening the aircraft.
Wheel chocks in.
It's all off. Wind that down.
Roger.
I'm going to place that boarding ladder since we have the left engine shut down.
Yep, I'm done.
Make the jet ready for use for the next person. All right, let's take a minute and we'll go look at TAC view. As we always do. Kind of go back through some of what we've already done with this one. All right, so again, as always, TACView is a free program that you can get that takes telemetry data from DCS, where the server allows, and converts it into a visual medium that you can look at and assess and see kind of everything what's going on. We'll get into some of that here in just a moment. It also works with a few other programs like Falcon BMS and IL-2, Battle of Stalingrad / Battle of X, for whatever it is that they're doing battles of these days. And if it is allowed by the server, it will show all of the other information that goes on, such as where every other vehicle is or where ground vehicles are. So it does help answer a lot of questions if you use it for that purpose, as far as what blew me up. Did I just spontaneously combust? Did, something happen? And then you go into TACView and pull it up and realize that, for whatever reason, you didn't see that you were over the top of an SA-13 and it shot you. Or, a MiG came after you and hit you with an R-27 ET, or, some other thing occurred that you were not aware of the fact that you were being attacked and it ended your existence. So we can also use it to kind of assess what we did, how we did it, where things were going, and see how close other things came. Let's go ahead and roll this forward. This was an air start that I made as part of the way through the recording. With the internet being down, I lost contact with the authentication server for DCS, so it immediately closed itself. Good job. Thanks, appreciate that, Eagle Dynamics. And Cox. Mostly Cox there on that one. So I went ahead and I adjusted the mission a little bit to account for the SA-3 that we already killed. And I gave myself a bomb load with laser-guided bombs since we were working with the PAVE spike pod mostly today. So cruising in, found our target. Getting shot at on our way in because we're more or less having to fly straight and semi-level. Took a hit, but it wasn't serious. No bomb came off there because we weren't properly latched. But we did get one this time. And the first group that we're targeting was the Shilka group with a GBU-10. So we are in a slightly shallow dive, and that is mostly to try and keep the PAVE spike pod as steady as possible on the target while we are capturing the target. Again, you can utilize the 12 o'clock position from the back seat if you're sitting in it, or Jester will utilize that by default to slave the sensor pointed forward in the aircraft, which is why we want to make sure that our mil dot setting for the air-to-ground pipper is set to 17 units, or 17 mils, as that will align where the pipper is looking with where the pod is looking. So we were able, as we came back around at about here, to capture that area. And now I'm just trying to keep it steady while steering the pod with my Wizzo antenna control keys that I had bound to my arrow keys on my keyboard. And I'm just trying to fly as level as I can, pressing and holding the pickle button. You can see the little adjustments there for my wings as I'm trying to come and align the 3 dots in the pipper on my HUD glass. Which you can't see when I'm going to the cockpit view like that because it's just showing a generic cockpit. But there's those 3 dots that are on the front of the F4's pipper that show proper alignment position for where you need to be to drop the bombs. I'm wanting to get that as close as I can because, again, this bomb only has a small seeker head to find the laser. And it found it. We're still getting shot, and I'm trying to adjust altitude ever so slightly while also maintaining my capture on the target area. That GBU-10 gets in there and kills all 4. Rolled out, we extended, we came back. We're targeting the Sparka group next. Same thing, we've captured the area, which we did back here. I got a hold of it fairly quickly. And I pulled back towards a more level attitude. Slight climb because I'm trying to vary my altitude and my position a little bit to avoid getting hit by 57mm fire. Which worked except for the 100mm autocannon fire that tapped my wing. Again, it wasn't serious, which is saying something for that, so it probably was a proximity burst that hit near us and not the actual shell itself. But we dropped that, and it crushed the Sparka group. At this point, we're still getting shelled by the gun pits. And this was a bomb that I lost, and it just kind of ballistically stumbled short. And we lost that mostly because I accidentally double tapped the full action trigger button, which put the pod in fire the laser mode, and then immediately turned around to, okay, cool, I'll recenter it. So it picked the pod up and I was no longer guiding the bomb properly. This one, though, drops right down on top of that SQN9 fire can system. Eliminates the S60 batteries, damages the KS19 ones because those stopped shooting at us pretty much the whole time we were fighting after that. And this, we were going to go ahead and hit this group here. This is where we plinked both of the buildings at the same time. Oh, no, that's right. No, I was doing tank work. I killed the tanks first. Dropped a couple of GBUs on them. Now we're dropping the 117s. Those went to the building. Killed a pair of MTLBs. Killed a BMP-2. This one we actually rippled 2, I believe. Yeah, 2 times 117s. We can get in real close. Play it in real time. Those bombs landed just in between those 2 tanks and seriously damaged both of them. Now at this point, I believe I'm out of bombs, so we're going to do a gun strafe on this BMP-2, which we do kill it. Rather pleased with that. It was in high rate. We fired 346 rounds and hit him with 306 of them. A lot of 20 mil for him. Came back in on this pair of vehicles, an MTLB and a BMP-2. Exhausted the rest of it. However, we did manage to hit the vehicles a combined total of 127 times, according to TACView. We were out of ammunition at that point, so we went home. Also see we're down to 3,000 pounds worth of gas. And we stopped and rearmed a bit. We were at 2,900 pounds. And then we took off and we start transferring gas from the fuel tanks that I picked up into the mains until we ran out of gas in those tanks. That is a method that I do use from time to time when I'm flying on servers if I need to be up much quicker. Otherwise, I will try and refuel while I'm on the ground. But if it's more important for me to get out and bomb one or two more things fairly fast, or jump up to try and protect one of my allied fighters or bombers that are about to come under MiG attack or whatever, then I will just grab fuel tanks, transfer those in after I get weight off the wheels, and get rid of the fuel tanks to go out and fight, as those transfer into the mains a bit quicker than whatever the tiny garden hose it is they use on the ground to refill your aircraft. One could also go find a tanker and refuel, but that might take you far, far away from wherever it is you're going, and if I needed weapons to go ahead and jump up and join the fight, that's a route to go. It's an option to execute. You'll usually see, whatever aircraft you're flying, you'll usually see the fuel transfer out of the tanks into your mains once weight's off the wheels. Alright, so back to GBU-12s. We dropped a pair because I was still in dropping pairs on these tanks here. Kaboom. Right through his hatch, so he's done. Dropped on those MTLBs. I think we dropped a bomb and it ran slightly long on the KS-19s that were still up, but was sufficient to kill them. And we put one through the building down there, and at that point, this mission's complete. And that's where we got our mission complete warning. Could have gone out here to go attack this point. Or no, we did. That's the undefended point. The way that I set this one up in order to spoof it as a site is the missiles are one group and the radars are a different one. Since they're not in the same group, they don't share information with one another. You can also do it by changing the rules of engagement inside the mission editor. But first bomb we put down range lands right next to search radar. And took out the search, the track, the Amazonka ranging radar, and most of the missiles that are associated with the site. We came up and back around in a minimum amount of airspace. Put a bomb there and got all but two of those vehicles. Same thing, we're still fighting inside the phone booth. This one we dropped. And landed just off center. Was sufficient to kill everybody there. I think at this point we had guns. Which, as we came in here to do this, it'd be a little easier to see looking through the pilot seat here. Steady up, and as I start the trigger pull and I see where the tracers are going, I give it just a little bit of rudder left and right because I'm shooting basically at a large area target. And I just needed a little bit of yaw to try and spread that love around and really kind of rake into all of the different vehicles that we could there. Since these are trucks, most of these vehicles are seriously damaged, if not completely destroyed. Coming back in on another pass. Same thing, gun goes out, a little bit of rudder stomp. Really just threaded that and destroyed most of that group with gunfire. We hit the gas, but not sufficient to kill him. And at that point, it was time for us to come home. I'm curious. See, the little gear lights are down. Approximately 15 units AOA is what we're looking for in the F4. A little low, a little shallow, and a little short. But we do settle down. The vertical speed is slowed down to under 500 feet per minute right before touchdown. And 1,400 pounds in the tank. A little light. That's kind of what we're looking at there. And we'll roll through the end of this here for now. It's a little bit early for the stream, but getting ready for that technician to show up and actually take a look at what's causing our sporadic outages that are affecting both Gleam's and my streams. I need to get ready for their arrival. So, we talked about the PAVE spike pod today. We put that through its purposes and its use. Worked with it as best we could. There are some limitations to consider, both in terms of how hard you can maneuver while trying to track your target, which is to say, not very much. In practice, it is better to go ahead and make use of buddy lasing as compared to trying to designate for yourself. Though it is possible to designate for yourself, it is better, especially when you're using something as archaic as PAVE spike, or perhaps even eventually as PAVE tac if we ever get that for the F4, which is a much heavier and more direct ancestor of like Lantern. But that is a useful pod that can be employed to guide laser-guided weapons, and it can do it successfully. You know, it really is a matter of knowing your systems, being familiar with them, being comfortable in their use, and being able to troubleshoot the myriad of minor errors that can happen along the way. All of those things are important. We fired strikes earlier in the whole experience, which will be on the recording. And those strikes ended up close to the target, but slightly short, which is occasionally just what happens with that weapon system. We talked about its limitations, mostly that it requires a constant beam of radar energy in order to successfully guide towards its target, which does mean that in most cases, number one, you are firing that weapon well inside the reach of whatever it is that's trying to come and kill you. Number two, because of the narrowness of its seeker head, it has to be able to see that, you know, illuminate in radar the whole time that it's in flight, which kind of means that you have to be, or somebody has to be, illuminated by the radar the entire time that weapon's in flight. It's not as quick as any of the missiles that are shot up as a SAM from the ground. So, broadly speaking, if you fire at the same time that the SAM site fires, you will always lose the race. Every time. Your weapon is so much slower than the system that is coming after you to try and kill you. So defend is the rule of law there on that one. We also dropped bombs in DT mode again and got some gun strafing in, which was successful across the spectrum on that. I think we are going to make a repeat of more work with PAVE Spike and perhaps do something a little more mission-oriented, and if I can get enough people up for it. Trigger, iHort, if you guys are still watching, floating around there, I know iHort's there somewhere, but Trigger, if you're watching too, we can get in there and do some buddy lacing work together and kind of show how that one functions differently than designating for myself, and the kind of techniques and things that we're looking for that, rather than kind of the straight in or slight offsets that we were doing today. So we'll see how that goes for next week. Hopefully they get the internet issue sorted today, and it's a right now problem that can be repaired or otherwise alleviated, and that should make everything else smoother. With that, folks, let's go ahead and roll through our usual closing that we got up there. The events that we see week to week are on the screen. We do have other things that we'll be playing along the way as well. I do like Gray Zone, and I'm thinking we're probably going to do a little bit more streaming with that, maybe on different days. We'll see how that works through. Probably different hours might be unscheduled, so stay tuned for that. Watch for the little notifications there. Monday we got coming up, I'll be doing DCS with Mander and Trigger, and probably playing on the randomizer mission that I put together either in Cold War Germany or on NTTR. Both of those are fun and successful and work, which is great. I'll be following up with classic games. We've been playing a lot of Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. I am just about to start fulfilling the Nerevarine prophecies on that one, so that should be a good one to play around with on Monday night. Friday, we just finished an Anastasia campaign for Arma 3, so I don't know what we'll be getting into this coming Friday, but we'll see what all we get in there, and then next week we'll be back for Pilum Teaches DCS. With that, your likes, your follows, your subscribes, all those things really do keep the channel moving and flowing. I appreciate those things very, very much, and cherish my audience always, whether it is large or small. If you prefer, you can always donate directly at coffee.com/PilumJRomar. We'll use that money for coffee, like I've been drinking today. Catch this and other VODs on the YouTube channel and at PilumRomar. With that, always ask for consent. Try to communicate as best you can with your partners. Try to be genuinely decent human beings. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, folks. Have a good night.